Very good morning, my dear friends. I am Prashant Mawani and I warmly welcome all of you to StudyIQ. Today is 14th February. I'm sure you all are aware about this thing that today is Valentine's Day, and I would like to share some thoughts on this day with you guys. It's not just about romantic love, and even if it is just about romantic love, as it is generally observed at present, I don't think so there is anything wrong with it. But the thing is, the main idea behind or the main idea of Saint Valentine is basically that whatever we do in our life, may it be a bigger task or a smaller one, right, we should do it with love, and this is very important with your studies, right? I'll give you a small hint regarding, or a tip. Whenever you are reading something that you find a bit boring, or you feel that you are not able to understand things, then do try to read that particular page or that subject as you are reading a love letter, right? The days of love letters are gone now, but I'm sure you might be aware about this thing, that people do read love letters, right? They do pay attention to each and every small word written in it, even the commas and full stops, right? People think about why this comma is here and why this full stop is here. What I'm trying to say is basically, when you are doing something with love, when you are completely involved in something, you pay attention to all the minor details that are out there, and this basically helps you a lot in understanding. If we are talking about our studies, then it helps you a lot with your studies. So there is always something that we can learn from the things that are going on around us, and I wish you, all of you, a very, very happy Valentine's Day. With this, dear friends, StudyIQ provides pen drive and tablet courses. Up to 50% discount is on at present, and the last date is tomorrow, so make sure you make the most out of it. With this, we have many interesting articles today. This one is the most interesting one and very relevant for all of us. It is about counterfactuals. What it is all about, we will go through it in detail. Very interesting one, this one too. It is about big data. We have heard about this thing, big data, and we have talked about this a little bit, not directly but indirectly, but today we will go through many important bits and pieces regarding big data. And then this one is about PM's visit to Palestine, and this one is about woods and trees. This woods and trees, yesterday, the last bit that we discussed, remember yesterday we talked about environment and that 4 themes on which you can, or 4 points through which you can analyze things associated with environment. And the last part of yesterday's news item, I provided you a picture that was published in the Hindu regarding an increase in forest cover, and I told you, if you remember, that what about the quality of forest, right? It is just quantitative figures that we get from that picture. So here is an editorial that is more likely talking or is discussing this quality, right? So let's crack on. And this one is about S.M. Krishna, former Chief Minister of Karnataka. He was in Congress for a very long time. As far as I remember, he was Union External Affairs Minister as well under Manmohan Singh's government, and he is in Congress now. He has joined Congress, BJP now, and this portion here, this article, is basically his interview, and this one is about these new gangs, the new way the gangs are operating and things like that. So let's start with this Israel, Palestine and India's relationship. Now, we have talked about this thing, and I'm sure you know it very well now, regular followers particularly, that India has managed to keep a very fine balance, very delicate balance, because we know that this Israel and Palestine, they are arch rival, and we have USA supporting Israel. Recently, you know that Mr. Trump declared that USA should, or he basically ordered his officials, diplomats, to start the process of transferring their USA's this diplomatic house or their embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, because as per USA, Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. Now, Jerusalem is a contested city. You have three religions, right? Semitic religions, many times they are called. They are the first one is Judaism, the second one is Islam, and the third one is Christianity, right? So you have these three different religions, and you find important religious sites in Jerusalem. So basically, you have a very important place for Muslims here, and then you have very important place for Jews here, and no one is ready to. In fact, it is very strange, right? The fight is going on for a piece of land that is known for religion, and all the religions in the world. If you go through Bible, if you go through Quran, if you go through this Ten Commandments of Moses, you find that no one is promoting hate. No one is promoting. In fact, every religion, right? It is teaching you peace and love and things like that. But very strange to find that if you go through human history, you will come to know that most of the wars before that, and even if you compare the wars that were done for property and other things, if you compare the figures, then you will find that most people were killed in the name, means huge numbers of people have died in the name of religion. So it's a very strange thing. Anyways, so India has voted against this stand of United States in United Nations, and we also know this reciprocal visits that took place, right? First of all, President of Palestine was here in India. Then later on, PM Modi visited Israel for the first time. Then we hosted Israeli Prime Minister here in India, and now for the first time, Prime Minister of India is in, basically he visited this place called Palestine. So this is what we call a delicate balance. At the same time, right, we have signed many agreements with Palestine, and many projects, including training the diplomats and women empowerment and other projects. We have signed many agreements with Palestine, and India is going to fund all these projects in West Bank. Israel is, of course, a source of defense equipment and agriculture. It is one of the best country in the world when we talk about water management, right? If you have gone through my recent special lectures, I have talked about in detail regarding how we can conserve water and things like that, and the things that we can learn from Israel, no doubt. In today's era, the way we know climate change is going on, and we are facing one more challenge of our land. Agricultural land are getting smaller and smaller in our country, so we need to produce more from less resources, and Israel can help us with this thing, with defense as well. They are one of the best in the world. But we have to also understand this thing, that when Israel is providing us all this technology, see, this is how it works, right? At the end of the day, all countries are basically like merchants or businessmen, right? They are happy and smiling with each other. You see good photographs and this diplomatic gestures and things like that, but everyone is looking for their own back or their own interest, right? So Israel is ready to give us this defense technologies because there is a very limited market that Israel has, right? Israel is facing political isolation internationally, particularly in the place where defense equipments are most required is this West Asian portion, but Israel cannot sell it to Arabic countries. So this is a thing. So India is a big market in terms of, if you go through, or if you are in world defense market, then India is one of the biggest buyers. So everyone would like to sell their items to India, no doubt. The other thing is that India's partnership with Israel is not at the expense of its principled support for the Palestinian cause. India knows it very well that if India blindly supports Israel without paying any heed or without taking into consideration the interest of Palestine, then we will basically have, or we will in fact develop a bitter relationship with other Muslim countries. I'm referring to this West Asian countries of Saudi Arabia and their means umbrella group of Saudi Arabia. You have Qatar, UAE, and other countries. They are supporting because, you know, it is not only political, it is about religion as well. So they have a soft corner, this other Muslim countries. Not all, but there are many Muslim countries. They have a soft corner for Palestine. So India cannot risk this thing as well, and India has done it very well. And here, one more thing that I would like to add is that we have always supported this two-state solution, which we have talked about earlier on. But the only thing that we find a little bit of change or a change in the shade is that earlier on we used to talk about this East Jerusalem and West Bank, and Israel should withdraw from West Bank and other things. But now we are not going into specifics. We are just sticking with a bigger picture that two-state solution is something that is required here. So I hope things are clear now. I don't think so now we will find that many things on this particular topic. So it could be a conclusion. Just in case if we find anything, then it will be a very brief discussion between us. This one is about woods and trees, about the quality of forest. Now let me take you through some figures, important figures here. India may be endowed, these lines are written here in this article, right? So we have 16 major forest types. Now you don't have to remember and go through all 16 major types. If you go through your basic general studies books, like say for example NCERTs, then you will find major different, you know, there are subcategories as well. So just remember, go through the major segments, right? You don't have to go through all these 16 major types. It is more for, you can say, for people who are associated with environment and things like that. For general studies, this is fine, right? I must mention here that if your mains subject is associated with environment and forest, then you should, and I'm sure you will then. And we have 221 types and subtypes. This is based on the Champion and Seth classification. But if you go back, when you study history, you will find this thing as well, that before this Europeans came in to our country, before that as well, we have seen many wars taking place between kings and tribal people or forest dwelling people. And one of the reason is at that point of time as well, it was the same thing. It was about conquering resources or having access to or authority over resources. Earlier on, forest dwelling people, they used to supply elephants, trained elephants, honey and leather and other items that you find only in jungle, right? So this was, they used to do a barter system, or they used to be, means they used to trade basically. Trading used to take place between forest dwelling people and this different kings and their merchants and things like that. But later on, kings started invading these people, and they gave a tough fight. And later on, when they were conquered, at that point of time, new conditions were applied by stronger kings because they were having huge amount of army and things like that. So at that point of time, no one was that much aware about. If we go back a little bit, then we find back in our history, in Indian history, right, we find in many books, in many scripts, we find that things have been said by scholars back in history. They are talking about protecting forest and you know, this philosophy. Even if you observe our gods and goddesses, right, Indian gods and goddesses, Hindu gods and goddesses, then you will find, always you will find some sort of animal or a reptile or, you know, bird is always associated with some gods and goddesses. And I'm sure you might have heard about this thing, that people don't kill snake, even though snake is a reptile. That means we have this in our subconscious, in our hard drive or software, whatever you can call it. It is there that the time you see a snake, you will be either in a fight or a flight mode, isn't it? Your body will be in an emergency state. But then as well, we don't kill it because a snake is considered in our country, it is associated with religion. So I think, right, I don't have any sort of support of any written evidence, but this is my own personal analysis. I think that this is a unique way of protecting biodiversity, right? So this is something that we can learn from India. The world can learn from India, and many different platforms. India has said, Prime Minister has said this thing many times, that it is in our genes to protect, to look after our environment. He has said this thing in many times, and he has always referred to Indian history and our way of living and things like that. But then we saw this thing that kings, they started exploiting this forest. The situation of tiger, right? We used to have lakhs and lakhs of tigers in our country, but at present they are in just thousands. Somewhere around, last figure was 2,300 or something. And then you have this colonial exploitation, and it's not just with India, right? This European colonial powers, they have in fact destroyed jungles or tropical jungles of Asia, as well as Southeast Asia, this Java island, and there are many examples. I can go on and on. So they have destroyed all these jungles, and since then, when we became independent, at that point of time as well, we did not pay that much attention. In fact, we are not looking after our environment as we should, and the best example is Bhutan. If you study about Bhutan, then you will find that they have in fact means clearly in their constitution as well, you have a specific figure that you cannot destroy, or the forest area cannot go down. It is somewhere around 30-35%. I don't remember exactly, I don't have that figure, but this much is enough, I believe, as a reference that Bhutan is one of the best countries in the world when it comes to environment protection. So anyways, so this environmental policy of our country at present, we are in fact on a mission that our forest cover, total area of forest, will be 33%. I don't know when in future. But the biggest question is about quality, right? It's not just about quantity, it is about quality. And Environment Ministry's data, if you go through it, then you find that 24.4% of area is under some form of forest or tree cover, and it is basically 1% rise over the previous estimates that took place 2 years ago. This has been done with the help of satellites and this remote sensing things, right? But the thing is, do we means this cover, we know this cover is increasing, no doubt, but this cover is not, you can say, natural. It is more artificial. What is happening is that we are in fact planting plants that we feel or that we know are going to be beneficial for commercial use, and this expansion is not going to help us. The other thing is that tree cover is not the same thing. Tree cover is not biodiverse, or it's not biodiversity. It is not those natural old forests or trees that we find in the woods, and the loss that we have inflicted on this northeastern states. As you can see here, right, this is a picture. You find that India is one of the most important global biodiversity hotspot in the world, and particularly this northeastern portion of our country that is sharing its border with Myanmar. This portion is very important. It is in fact a biodiversity hotspot, and the damages that are done here in, see, as per the figures, 1,200 square kilometer forests are destroyed in Mizoram, Nagaland and Arunachal Pradesh, and you cannot replace this thing, right? You cannot, by artificially planting, you cannot replace this natural cover. So This is one of the reasons why these environmental economists have come to regard the calculation of national accounts of wealth and development as weak, because we are just counting money, and we are just means all the things that we can count, right? We are taking only those things into consideration. We are not calculating the loss that we are making, right? The long-term loss. There are many things that we cannot count, like say for example quality of air. You cannot count quality of air with any meter, but you know it very well that some of the visible things that we can count, we know that the number of our kids and small children and elderly people getting sick and suffering from many diseases, this floods, right, the severity of floods and going up and up. So this sort of things are taking place, and we are still not counting it. So this artificial thing is not going to help us, and it is basically we have to keep some areas, right? We have to protect them and let nature take its own call, right, rather than interfering with it. With this, dear friends, how to handle big data, very important one. Now here you find a very interesting line, that art of data science is more about asking the right questions than just having data. And it is, I would like to add here that it applies to your studies as well, because generally what we find is that the more I read, the more articles I read, the more news I read, the better I'm going to be. What happens with this more and more or more quantity is basically the chances of making huge mistakes, right? They also go up. You will get confused with many unimportant data, and then basically your situation becomes like this, right? You are finding a needle in a haystack. Something similar takes place in the world of data as well. Nowadays, you know that even if you swipe your debit or credit card at a restaurant, and I'm sure when you go out to eat, they ask you for your, when you place your order at the end, they ask you for your phone numbers, isn't it? Many times you get calls from different companies and messages and things like that. The sites that you are surfing on the internet, the things that you post on social media, right? Your online purchases, everything. Someone is collecting information about us. And the mistake that big companies or this data collecting companies, the big mistakes that they are making is basically they are collecting everything. It is basically a junk, and this was proved back in 2008 when Google flew trends, right? Google provided a flu trend earlier than this CDC. CDC stands for the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. And what actually took place is basically Google's data was, or this Google flu trends were absolutely wrong. Most of the things said in this Google flu trends were wrong, because it was just relying on this data that was collected. And the thing is, at the end of the day, big data may mean more information, but it also means more false information, right? A couple of days ago I was out. I'll just give you one example, right? I was out to eat something, and the person asked me for my phone number. So I was accompanied by one of my friend, and what he did basically, he gave a mobile number of our common friend, and he gave a false name, and that person took, means there is nothing that there is no way, right? You can verify it. So that restaurant just took our wrong name and a wrong mobile number, and this is how it works, right? You have lots and lots of wrong information when you are collecting this junk, or you can say this data from every possible sources. So it will not provide you a right picture until and unless you apply some strong logic, or you can say some systematic methods on it, right? You have to apply your skills, you have to analyze it, then you need people as well to make decisions or to take decisions, and you have to go through many other things. You have some ready-made softwares, but you cannot rely on them. And this article is written by a statistician, and this applies to the government as well. You know, a couple of days ago when Israeli Prime Minister was here, at that point of time, one thing was discussed, that we are going to use this big data, right, for our agriculture. This was said, but it may sound good at that point of time, that wow, we are going to use it and this will change everything wrong that is going on with our agriculture for ages and ages. Everything will be changed with the entry of Israel. But that is not right. We have to understand that what information we have, whether we have too much of information or too less, and we have to also analyze and ensure that the softwares that we are using to analyze this data that we have, whether they are right or wrong, whether they fit for this purpose or not. So just relying on big data is not going to be sufficient. That's what this article is trying to say. And moving on to this one, very interesting one. As I told you, this is about the danger of counterfactuals. Now, the thing is, you might have heard this argument somewhere. There are many people, they believe that Sardar Patel should be the first Prime Minister of our country. There are many people who criticize Jawaharlal Nehru for no reason. Now, before moving ahead on this particular item, let me tell you that as a teacher, I am not inclined to I'm not a BJP person, neither I am supporting Congress, right? I am analyzing this thing and I have some of my own experiences, what I have seen and heard. So I feel when people say that Jawaharlal Nehru did this and that and he did this thing is wrong and this Kashmir issue is wrong because of him. Now, there are many decisions that are taken by Jawaharlal Nehru, like say for example this Portuguese, right? They were not ready to leave India. They were not ready to free Goa at that point of time. Imagine that Jawaharlal Nehru was highly influenced by Gandhiji. We know it very well. But then as well, even the USA's president said that we should not use force against Portuguese people. But then as well, we used it, right? We took a military action. So that does not, means there are many examples that can prove that he was not a soft person as we tend to believe. Now, recently, Prime Minister in Lok Sabha, basically responding to this president's address, he has blamed Congress party for all the things that are wrong. Like say, for example, this partition that took place. And partition is something that is that has left you can say psychological scars in the minds and the hearts of the people of India and Pakistan. And if we go through this hatred thing or this communal riots, nowadays we are seeing them going more and more, or it could be that they are reported quite widely now, but we have seen communal riots taking place in our country. And if you go back in the history, like say for example, we hear this thing about Muhammad Ghaznavi, that he attacked this Somnath temple of our country. And if you go through the findings of many historians, then you will find that it was not means, of course, when someone attacks your religious place, then you are going to feel bad about it. There is no doubt, right? This creates a very negative emotion, and the most visible thing is that person's religion, right? This intruder's religion. So this is something that is quite natural. But the main purpose was not about religion. The main purpose was money, as per historians. There are many national level historians. You can go through books of Romila Thapar and other historians as well, and they have said this thing, that it was more about money that these intruders were after, and not about destroying anyone's religion. Anyways, but before we know this Aurangzeb era, he used to charge, but we have some beautiful examples like Ashok, we have Akbar, right? And there are other many kings as well in different parts of our country. They have always, it's not something that they have done it forcefully. They have done it out of understanding, out of consciousness, that all religions, they teach love, as we started this lecture with, isn't it? So this was something that was there in our gene, and in fact it is still in our gene. But many a times we find this politicians and political parties, they are trying to use this sort of incidents. And the strange thing is that it is about cricket, right? These commentators, or people, this audience, right, they say that Virat Kohli should have played like this way or that way. But it is easy to say when you are sitting there on a chair in a stadium having a drink in your hand, but it is altogether different thing when you are out there on the wicket. So this is how it works. Like, partition has of course killed millions and millions of people back in history, and it is one of the most painful thing that took place in our country. And it's not just about India and Pakistan, it is about this whole subcontinent. The fabric of this continent was a bit damaged, or left a permanent damage, this thing called partition. But the sad thing is that we are now paying more attention to the cause, to this things, or what took place, right, during this partition, rather than paying attention to its causes. We are paying attention to these consequences, like murders took place and rapes took place and mutilation and displacement, and all these things are consequences of this partition. But what were the causes? And if you go through different accounts of historians, we find that the main cause was this divide and rule policy of British government. What they did, they were in fact they were on a mission or a project to intellectually colonize Indians. They were quite awestruck by the way this altogether different ways of living of Hindus and Muslims, right? But there was a fraternity between, and in fact there is a fraternity at present as well. It depends how you see the glass, whether it is half empty or half full. So I see it half full. So I still believe, and I literally trust in this thing, that yes, our country is a secular thing. And when you go abroad nowadays, you find their brochures, their advertisement cards, they say that we are London city, for example, is a cosmopolitan city. You find people from different parts of the world, different religious background people, they live here in London. But this it does not impress me that much, because our country from last 2000 years or more has always been like this way, isn't it? So this is a sort of story, a small background regarding India. But this was the main agenda of British government, to intellectually colonize Indians, and they were successful in doing this thing. And because of this thing, we faced this partition. And what happens on regular basis is that see, you may have you may not like a particular person, and it's not just based on that person's religion. There could be many things. He could be a tennis player and you would be a football player, so you don't fancy tennis players for whatever reason, but that does not mean that you will use weapon to kill them. But something similar takes place in society as well, right? We like to basically create these brackets, and I'll give you one example, right? I'm sure you will agree with this thing. Students preparing for, say for example, IAS, they will consider, I'm not saying everyone, but this is something I'm sure you might have observed, that if someone is preparing for IAS, then that person is on the top of the table. But if someone is preparing, say for example, so a post office or maybe bank exam, then that you don't attract or that much attention when you're preparing for other exams. IAS is on the top, isn't it, in our country? But that does not mean that IAS is everything. There are other services as well. They are that important, and everyone we all have different tastes, right? Someone would like to become IAS, someone would like to become a bank manager. So it depends, and everyone, as we know that we all are working in a ecosystem. So this is how everyone is important. So in the same way, different religion, different way of living, everything basically at the end of the day adds color to our life. And so this wrong, you can say this this word here, counterfactuals, right? This counterfactuals or this speculations that this should be like this way or that should be done by that way, etc., are something that we should be very careful of, because there are people in our country, there are organizations in our country, they are expert in using these emotions of people, and they know how to exploit fear that is there in the heart and mind of people, and then we can have all these riots and other things. So that's everything about this article, and so I hope things are clear to you now. This one is about Gomteshwar statue atop in Vindhyagiri, and we have this horrific incident took place in our country basically, and this sort of things are quite often reported. Lack of health and safety thing, and Pakistan is going to take, or in fact it is going to take over this asset. So basically eventually it took some sort of action against this Hafiz Saeed and this other banned organizations or terrorist outfits that are declared by United Nations. And see the way they have these ambulances and schools and health centers, right? This JUD and this FIF, and this is how they win people's confidence. They are supporting, they are providing this sort of things as well. So people think that they are their godfathers, but their agenda is altogether different. Then you have another news item, and it is about this same item, same issue regarding this Pakistan banning or this Lashkar-e-Taiba and Hafiz Saeed. And basically you have this financial action task force, and this resolution was sponsored by USA, UK, France and Germany against Pakistan. So it is a sort of make-up thing that Pakistan, or you can say, because it is going to be under pressure in the upcoming meeting, so it has taken a sort of this sort of step. University, Lucknow University, one of the faculty associated with university says that Valentine's Day is a thing associated with Western influence. Now I will leave it on you guys to decide whether it is or not, right? You can think about it. One of the most important news item you have is this one: RBI norms. RBI, Reserve Bank of India's new norms directing banks to start insolvency proceedings on accounts if stress is not resolved within 180 days. Then it could result, see, these are the new norms. On Monday RBI came out with these new norms that you have to, if things are not sorted out, if you don't get anything from your client, if they are not paying you interest or principal, then you can start this insolvency proceeding on them. And Moody's has said that this revised framework, this prompt action that will be taken from now on, the numbers of NPAs may go up, but at the same time the good thing is that this is a proactive resolution, so you are being very quick rather than evergreening. Evergreening means giving more and more time and giving more money and making sure that that loan is always a loan rather than a finished transaction. So this sort of things will be gone. So it is good for the health of bank and for the economy. And then you have some technical items as well here, like SMA, what is SMA and what is SMO and SMA1. So you can go through it, very easy read. This sort of things are, right? So I'm not going through them. This one is about UAE's and India's agreement on this thing called associated with petroleum. We are going to have 10% stake. So we are, rather than earlier on we were buyers and seller relationship was there between India and UAE, but now we are going to have 10% stake as well. And the other thing is that we are going to reserve their oil. I think I told you about this thing yesterday. Anyways, we are going to stock their oil here in our country, and we would be able to use it as well whenever required. So this is a good thing here. It will create many jobs and things like that. Cyber security should be the top priority if we want to promote this digital India, said minister. And he also asked states to continuously monitor the websites and take all the steps that are important for cyber security. He also discuss this roadmap of making our India into a $1 trillion digital economy. And these are your answers here, right? This is your answer. In fact, I ask you one question only, and I have a quick question for you guys. Do you really want me to pass you MCQs on regular basis or ask you questions? Because what I see is that very few, even in 0.1%, right, 0.001% or 0.01% students out of you, they answer it. So if you're not interested, then do let me know, because I have to go through many questions to select some, right? And one more thing, many students have asked. One student, I think, has asked about Urdu language. Can you give exam in Urdu language? I would reckon you guys to go through a notification, right? This is the thing. Go through the notification. It is easily available there. Go through latest UPSC or Civil Service exam notification and go through it. The problem is no one is reading this notification. If you read notifications, there are many things, right? Many doubts that you have. Those doubts will get cleared. So don't rely on me, right? Rely on this notification. Go through it, and that's everything that I have got to discuss today. Do let me know about these questions, right? This is not the first time we are talking about it. Now I have to be a bit harsh here, because if this is the way you are preparing, then I'm sorry to say this is going to take ages for you to fulfill your dream. You have to give everything you have if you want to succeed. There is a tough competition out there. And remember, the best person is going to crack this exam. So if you are relying on something else or daydreaming, then forget about it. This is not going to help you. I'll see you all soon. Enjoy your studies again. Very happy Valentine's Day. Peace. Jai Hind.